BMX bikes have definitely come a long way from when I was a kid. They have been engineered to be stronger for the abuse, but also more efficient to a rider's needs. So many more options compared to when I was a kid. When you bought a BMX bike, you got what was at the shop. Now you can really narrow down every little detail to what will fit you personally. Whether you're into freestyle, dirt jumps, flatland, or racing, there's a bike out there for exactly what you want. It may take you some time and some money, but eventually you'll figure it out. Welcome to modern day BMX.
All right, homies, let's get real. In the last video, I talked to you about how I turned 43 years old and I decided I was gonna get back into BMX. Definitely questionable. I guess I just didn't realize how much pain I'm willing to put myself through. But along this road to learn about BMX, I've realized 5 things that I'm gonna tell you about that are super scientific about modern day BMX bikes. Frame geometry is more important than your credit score. Well, not really, but back in the day when I used to buy bikes, a frame was a frame. Does it roll? Can it hold my weight? That's all that mattered to me. Today, there's head tube angles, top tube angles, chainstay lengths, seat tube heights, all of this stuff matters, and it'll change everything you do on a BMX bike with just slight different numbers. This is the Colt Biggie frame, and after me doing a lot of research on different specs, I feel as if this may be the perfect frame for me. A couple of reasons why frame geometry is so important. When you have a longer top tube, it's gonna make it harder to pull that bike back. If you have a long chainstay length, it's gonna be harder to get that bike into a manual. But also, with that being said, a longer top tube is gonna give you a more steadier bike to ride, especially when you're going at speed. And a longer chainstay length is also gonna help you if you want it to be steady on really big jumps. For me personally, I like to ride street style and a lot of skate parks, so I prefer a shorter chainstay and a shorter top tube. This is a 20.5 top tube. I have found in the last couple bikes I've been riding that the 20.5 is perfect for me. I've also ridden a 20.25. It was nice and twitchy, but the problem was it was too short and I didn't feel stable riding it at fast speeds. The chainstay length, I've had really short chainstay lengths, and now I've kind of figured out that 13, around the 13 mark is perfect for me. I had a really short one like 12.5, and that was just too short. I kept looping out, and anything past a 13.5 is just way too long and I cannot get the bike to come up. I'm not that good at manuals as it is, but these were the reasons why I chose these specs on a frame so that it would help me for my style of riding. One of the things that I didn't know was the seat tube height. I've noticed that if the seat tube height is a little bit taller, it's actually a little bit easier to get that bike up in the manual position. Having a really short seat tube height is really good for people who like to do tail whips because they need to get their legs over that top tube and spin the bike. So that's a really good tip if you're trying to figure out those kinds of tricks and if this pertains to you. Another thing that's pretty important is your head tube angle. Head tube angles come in steep or slacked out. Steep is gonna make that bike super twitchy, really good for tricks, nose manuals, and slacked out is also gonna be for that speed. Hitting really big dirt jumps, that kind of stuff. Because like I said, I like to ride street. I like a little bit of a steeper head tube angle. Another geometry part of the frame that you need to pay attention to. Not only are your BMX frames very important when it comes to your geometry and what you like to ride, your handlebar geometry is just as important. Most people don't pay attention to this. I didn't pay attention to this when I got back into BMX, and now I've learned a few things on what I like and what I don't like. You have to learn about the up sweep and the back sweep. Some bars are very flat, they don't feel as good to me. Some bars that have a little bit of a back sweep feel great to me, and so that's what I've been going with. And now in today's modern bike standards, bars are a lot taller compared to what they used to be. Bars back in the day were pretty short. I mean, a tall bar back in the day was like an 8-inch rise from the bottom to the top right here. Well, guess what? These are a 9.35, and this is considered not a very tall bar. For me, this worked perfect. Some people run 9.5, some people run 10s, and some people I heard even run 11s. I've never seen an 11 in real life, but I've definitely seen some 10s. And when I get on those bars, it feels like 8 hangers, way too big for me. But my point is, not only is frame geometry important, but handlebar geometry is important. It just depends on what you like. And now my final thing on geometry, your forks. The one cool thing about forks today is that they're built a lot stronger than they used to be. One of the other cool things I really like about modern day good forks is that you don't have to have your bearing race on the bottom anymore. Now the bearings will seat right on the bottom of your fork without having to have that stupid bearing race that took 100 years to get off. You had to use a screwdriver, you messed it all up. It had marring all over it because you smashed it with a hammer and a screwdriver. Now you don't have to do that. And the thing you need to remember about forks is that they have this thing called offset, which is going to bring the wheel either farther out forward or farther up into the fork. But the most common ones is 15, 24, and 32. I like my offset to be kind of short because it does make the wheel a little bit more twitchier when you're doing tricks, and it also makes it to where when you're doing 180s or 360s, you can really pivot off that front wheel, and I really like that. I've noticed that the 15mm offset I do like a lot, and I like also the 24mm offset. Those are the two I try to stick with. I don't like to go any more than a 24mm offset because then my bike feels really long. And it's good for high speeds, but I ride park, like I said, so I don't need anything that's gonna make me go too fast because skate parks are kind of small and you're not going too crazy. These Colt forks right here are pretty awesome because they're in between a 15mm offset and a 24mm offset, and these in particular are an 18mm offset. All right, another thing of modern day BMX, the Feecoaster. What's a Feecoaster? This is a Feecoaster. Notice how that's completely silent? That's because a Feecoaster is not like a regular wheel that has a cassette. Here is a cassette wheel. Hear that nice ticking sound that all your BMX bikes did back in the day? This is how a old regular wheel used to work. It had a cassette. It would click and then the pause would engage and then you can pedal your bike. And that's how it worked over and over and over. Makes sense, right? Yeah, because that's what we did. Now, there's this thing called a Feecoaster, and it makes it to where you can actually go backwards and there's silence, absolute silence. So anyways, a Feecoaster is pretty cool. I just recently got into Feecoaster riding. I never rode a Feecoaster, I always rode a cassette. When I got out of BMX back in my mid-20s, Feecoasters were around, but they weren't that popular. Only a few people had them. And I thought, man, that looks pretty cool. And didn't hear much about them other than they were always breaking on people. I guess the technology back then, Feecoasters weren't that great, and now they are. I decided to join the Feecoaster Club. The first week and a half, 2 weeks riding a Feecoaster, I absolutely hated it. It was not fun because there's this thing called slack that you get in the wheel, and your cranks don't engage to the wheel right away. There's slack. Here's what I mean by Feecoaster slack. When you push the pedals back on a regular cassette wheel, you can hear it clicking. There's no click, but before the wheel will engage, there's a gap. That's the gap. That's almost about 1/8 of a turn of the cranks, which is pretty scary. A lot of people who aren't used to this, they will go to pedal forward and then their foot will go sliding forward fast because they didn't realize there was gap or they forgot about the gap. That was the main reason why I didn't like Feecoaster when I first started. It was weird. I felt like I wasn't in control, but then I got used to it. You start using your momentum of just coasting around rather than having to engage the wheel all the time. So that's what a lot of people don't like about a Feecoaster. Personally, I hated it in the beginning. Now I love it and I only want to ride Feecoaster because the benefits of Feecoaster are this. Being able to roll backwards without having to pedal backwards, because that's what a cassette will do and it makes it engage. You will have zero engagement and your wheel, instead of going backwards and engaging, you go like this. Now the wheel will go this way. Now the wheel will go this way. But when it's engaged, it will do this. So like I said, in the beginning, the Feecoaster was a nightmare. I almost took it off. I didn't want to ride it anymore because I just didn't understand how to ride one. Now, I'll never ever ride a regular wheel without a Feecoaster. To me, it's so much more fun. It makes it so you can actually coast backwards a lot easier, and it makes it so you can unlock a whole nother mess of tricks, which I think is totally awesome. Modern day BMX, Feecoaster. But some people still like cassettes, and that's cool, whatever. I just don't like them. You ride what you like. Another thing that has significantly changed is tire tread patterns. Back in the day on BMX bikes, they always had like the knobbies, right? Knobbies were pretty common. People would ride them in dirt because obviously BMX stands for bicycle motocross. Well, today's standard in like street tires and park tires and dirt jumping tires have gotten a lot smoother. Tread patterns have calmed down, they're more round, they have a little bit of lines in them, probably just to dissipate water and dirt maybe, but for the most part, tread tires that have big knobbies, you don't see them that often anymore. They exist and they're out there, they're just not that common anymore. Personally, I like a tread pattern that is semi-slick but also has a little bit of a knobby. Another thing too is that tires are a lot wider now. Tires are coming in at like 2.45 is one of the biggest tires I've ever got. And to put that in perspective, my mountain bike tires, which are 29ers, those are 2.5s as well. So it's a pretty big tire, it's pretty wide, you get a nice contact patch. The reason for that contact patch being so good is that means you have that much wider area of tread touching the ground so you don't lose it. Back in the day, wheels were pretty thin, tires were pretty thin. I want to say I had tires back in the day that were 1.75. It's pretty skinny compared to a 2.45. This one right here is a 2.4. This is a 2.4. My last tires on a bike that I just sold had 2.45s. They were Primo tires. They are pretty awesome. The one thing I did find being difficult though is certain frames don't like the 2.4 tires, especially if they have any type of big tread pattern. For instance, these E-Claw wheels that I have right here are a very wide wheel, and along with a 2.4 tire, they are also very wide. If you see right here in my fork, there is not much room for error in there. And when you get forks that may not have a bigger area right here, you'll have a tire that may rub up against the fork, especially if it gets out of true. So that's one thing you got to pay attention to. I want to say these are like 41 millimeters wide or something like that. I can't remember. These are definitely on the wider side of a wheel. And I personally like the wider wheels, like I said, because it gives you a better contact patch. And this is what I was talking about when I said it has like a semi-knobby, you know, not a crazy protruding knobby, but just enough to handle some dirt really well, along with some park riding and some street riding. So think about the tire tread, think about how wide the tire is, think about how wide the rim is. These are all new things with modern day BMX that'll be super helpful when you're trying to choose the things that you want to buy for your bike. So keep that in mind. There's wider rims, wider tires, and think about what your frame looks like. All right, last but not least, one of the most controversial things in BMX, in my opinion, maybe not, I don't know. For older riders, it's definitely controversial, is brakes or brakeless. I'll be honest with you. I was a BMX with brakes rider up until a few months ago. I would never go brakeless. I was like, what's the point of that? What happens when I need to stop? And then all of a sudden, I went brakeless. Yes, no brakes on my BMX bike. Now, most of these frames do come with brake mounts that are removable, so you can run brakes or no brakes. You can't really see it, but underneath here is where your removable brake mounts would go if you wanted to run brakes. Most of the frames have brake mounts, but there is a few that wouldn't have it because some freestyle signature frames, they just don't run brakes, and that's the reason for that. Running brakeless is a big step in the BMX world. Some riders do it, some riders don't. The mass majority of pros these days are not running brakes. Most of the kids I go to the skate park with and all the homies, they all don't run brakes. They kept bugging me to take my brakes off my bike. I wasn't sure about it. I was a little scared, but then it all came to me. It all made sense. I took my brakes off just to try it, and I actually liked it. It was great. The reason I say I liked it is because what it did was it made me a better rider. When I got rid of my brakes, it made me plan my pedaling better. It made me realize what my speeds were, and it made me realize that I could still flow around the whole entire skate park without needing brakes. Is it a commitment? Yes. Is it smarter to have brakes? Probably. But you know what? I don't want to look like a dummy out there with brakes and not look cool in front of all my BMX friends, so I went brakeless. No, but seriously, going brakeless makes you a better rider because you focus more on how you're pedaling, what your speeds are, you learn everything a lot better, and they don't get in the way. Sometimes if you're trying to throw any bar spins, your brake cable might get in the way. Also, your hand might go and hit the brake lever. And if that happens, that could make things a lot worse. So there's ups and downs, pros and cons to riding brakes and brakeless. If I were ever to learn dirt jumps, I would definitely want brakes because you're going at such high speeds that it's kind of scary not to have something to slow you down. You could always put your foot in the back of your tire like you did back in the day, but the question is, what do you think? Are you gonna run brakes or are you gonna run brakeless? Leave a comment down below because I'm curious how many people would rather run brakeless or actually run with brakes. All right, well, those were my 5 things that I learned about modern day BMX in the last 6 months. I hope it was helpful for you. It was cool for me to figure all this stuff out. I had to spend some money to figure it out because I didn't know, but now I'm gonna build up this new Colt Biggie frame with a lot of the leftover parts that I got from another bike and be selling a couple other bikes because the geometry wasn't perfect, so I'm gonna get rid of them. And if you wanna buy one of my bikes, you can. Hit me up on Instagram and I'll sell it to you. I'm gonna be building this bike and I'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching. And if you'd like to leave some comments down below about what you learned about modern day BMX, feel free to leave some. And I'll be down there to be a little keyboard warrior and talk to you. Other than that, thanks for watching. See you later. Have a good night. BMX for life.